Hello Scouts and welcome to Scouting at Home. Today's activity is the second part of basic pioneering knots. You'll find an activity sheet attached which will work you through step by step for the shear lashing and the figure of 8 lashing. But stay with us and we'll be showing you that on the video also. Good luck and good scouting. To tie a shear lashing we're going to need 2 poles and a lashing. To start, we'll tie a clove hitch onto our first pole. If you're not familiar with the clove hitch, you'll find that covered in our previous video, Pioneering Basic Knots number 1. We're then going to wrap the rope loosely around both poles. We don't want it tight because we want there to be a little bit of movement between them. We'll go around 5 or 6 times and then we'll go into the frapping, which is where we pass the rope between the 2 poles to tighten the knot around the poles but maintain that spacing. When we make this really tight, this is where that'll get a really good firm grip on our poles, and we're going to finish off with 2 half hitches at the top here. So wrap around and tuck under itself, and do that a second time, wrap around and tuck under itself. And you'll see that a clove hitch has appeared here. 2 half hitches makes a clove hitch. Now that we have this tied together, we have our shear lashing complete. You'll see there that the shear lashing allows us to turn the 2 legs apart to make, for example, an A-frame. For a figure of 8 lashing, we're going to need 3 poles and a lashing. We'll start by tying a clove hitch to one of our poles. If you're not familiar with the clove hitch, we covered this in Basic Scout Pioneering Knots video number 1. Once we've tied that on, we're going to then place our 3 poles side by side and weave our rope around them. We're going to go back and forth around the poles 4 or 5 times, not making them too tight. This is a knot where we want a bit of movement, so we don't want to pull the rope tight as we go. But if you struggle keeping that distance, you may pop something in between them just to help out. But as I said, we're going to go around 4 or 5 times before we start frapping. To frap, we're going to wrap the rope between the poles a couple of times, pulling super tight. This is what's going to help the rope attach itself to the poles and stop them moving around to make them nice and secure. Once we've wrapped around the first pole, we'll move to the second pole and we'll frap around that as well. Again, pulling really tight. We'll go around a couple of times between each one. To finish off, we're going to finish with a clove hitch, but we're going to do that using 2 half hitches. So we're going to wrap the rope around the pole and tuck it under itself to make a half hitch. And we do that a second time. And there we have a clove hitch. And that is the figure of 8 lashing. The purpose of this, of course, is to help us to make tripods. By giving a little bit of articulation between each of the poles, we can move them in different directions, but the poles are all securely fastened to each other. Very useful in our pioneering, the figure of 8 lashing.